This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 404 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Wurzko, and today we will talk about a 1-1 draw away to VfL Bochum, a 3-0 win against Greuther Fürth, and Saturdays, and please don't ask me why, Bundesliga Topspiel against Hertha Berlin. For all that and more, joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
I am doing well, Stefan. How are you?
I don't know. I'm kind of just annoyed with the entire situation. I'm not best pleased with how Borussia Dortmund are faring these days. But Matthias, I don't want to talk about the game just yet because there's something I'm actually excited about to talk about. Probably the only thing in this entire podcast. But we don't have a sponsor for this episode. But I want to plug the long-awaited book by our good friend Terry DeFellon. It's called Borussia Dortmund, A History in Black and Yellow. From their humble beginnings to the present day, Die Schwarz-Gelben have always been at the forefront of German football. This book details their journey and how they became the key destination for young talent in the world game. The triumphs are celebrated here as we tell the history of one of the most celebrated clubs in Europe. Names you know, origin stories you don't, this book has them all. This is Borussia Dortmund, A History in Black and Yellow. Once again, I really want to recommend this book to everyone, and you must order the book at ockleysbooks.co.uk, and is also available at Amazon. But obviously, it's always more helpful if you order the book directly via the publisher. We're also going to do a giveaway soon, and we will obviously have Terry on to talk about it. That's also very exciting. So, Matthias, you have known Terry, I think, for even longer than me, right?
Yeah. I mean, Terry and Mr. Hartley are the reasons why there's even a Yellowwall podcast, to be perfectly honest. I was still living right in the area where you live right now when I was on their old German football podcast, 10 years ago. And in the summer after that, I moved to Colorado and floated the idea of a club-focused English language podcast. Both of them, Mr. Hartley was kind enough to come up with the Yellowwallpod name, actually, and Terry was very supportive. And so I'm really, really excited about this book. I have a German one that I bought, about 10 years ago. It's called Der Ruhm, der Traum und die Leidenschaft. It's the history of Borussia Dortmund, but it was still with Jürgen Klopp in charge there, and very young Lucas Barrios and so on and so forth on there. So I'm very excited to read this book from Terry and to purchase it and get it in my hands. I do have some ebooks, but I'm still, I mean, you know, I'm old. So I still prefer actually holding a book and reading it. There's just something about that I personally enjoy more. I feel like I enjoy the book more. I understand it better if I could hold it. It's silly maybe, but so be it. So I look forward to getting that at some point.
Yeah, my favorite consummation of a book is actually, I really prefer audiobooks. I really like to just sit down and listen to it, or, fall asleep while listening to it, or, sitting at the beach and listening to an audiobook is also one of my favorite things, because that way you can actually stare off into the distance. But less about me and more about Borussia Dortmund now, Matthias. I might want to tap into your vast age when we talk about the Europa League draw against Rangers FC. But in the meantime, we still have to cover some Bundesliga stuff. So Dortmund obviously had this long-awaited away trip to VfL Bochum, the small Revier derby, where I think I don't know, 15 kilometers is what people say. I don't know what the actual distance is between the stadiums, but either way, Bochum is just around the corner. It's hard to say where sometimes Bochum starts and Dortmund ends, etc. But so we had a very interesting game, I want to say, where the expected goals read 1.02 to 2.9 in the end. We had 4 shots with 3 on target by Bochum and 23 shots with 8 on target by Dortmund. We had 0 to 15 corners, 62% possession by Dortmund. Dortmund ran 120 kilometers, which is 4 more than Bochum did, and we had 243 sprints to Bochum's 238. So this was a very lopsided affair, yet in the end, Dortmund only hold 1 point. And not a lot of people were very happy with that result. Obviously, Marco Rose was sidelined for this one after, his suspension that he got in the Bayern game. And Zico after the game at the press conference said that there's not too much to complain about in this game because, it's just one of those where the ball just seemingly doesn't go over the line as often as you want it. I mean, I think Bochum had 3 or 4 goal line clearances and a very good goalkeeper also. But what are you making of this game?
Well, I think it's best summarized in a tweet. I can't remember if it was you or Lars who tweeted it out, who basically said, this game can go on forever and Dortmund won't score. I mean, it's just one of those games, and those games do sometimes happen. I agree with Marco Rose. I agree with what my own eye sees, and also what Lars tweeted. He said this is one of the best first halves Dortmund's ever played, and just got unlucky. And it was actually a very good game, very well executed game by Dortmund, and Bochum just got lucky. I mean, it's not just that Dortmund got unlucky. Bochum also got lucky. I mean, they talk about tenacious defending, but a couple of those goal line clearances, it's not like the Bochum player even knew what was happening. It was almost like the ball happened to find them.
Yeah, like the shot by Meunier.
Yeah, and they just kind of scrambled it away. I mean, it's not like we've seen it before. I'm thinking specifically of, say, Augsburg last season, where they just defended so deeply and succinctly as a unit, and were able to almost like strategize, getting goal line clearances or anything like that. That wasn't the case here. I mean, it was just unlucky bounces for one, lucky for the other. Bochum did not deserve to get a point out of that. Dortmund definitely deserved to get 3 points out of that. But, karma is karma, Stefan. And you could argue almost that the result from Wednesday, you probably could have flipped Wednesday's result with Fürth and Bochum result. And maybe that would have been more, I don't know, I guess, correct when you look at the overall performances.
Yeah.
I think, Fürth were unlucky to a degree. I mean, maybe they were not unlucky to lose, but they were unlucky to lose the way they, by 3 goals. And Bochum were completely lucky to not get absolutely blown away in that game, which they should have been. So it really comes down to, a lot of people are pinpointing Kobel for that reckless challenge, one that he really didn't have to make. It was, again, one of those situations where the striker's kind of actually going away from goal. There was no real reason for him to rush out like he did. But I thought about it when I saw it, was the discussion we had, I think, 2 weeks prior to that, where I said, well, hopefully, with some insecurities in the back line and the constant reshuffling, that Kobel doesn't feel like he has to do too much. He doesn't have to do the Bürki thing, where, Bürki just felt like he had to do more because he couldn't trust his backline. And I saw that, and I remember, I think it was once again Lutz Pfannenstiel, because apparently he's the only one Dortmund won't get anymore.
The most annoying guy. I'm sorry.
But he knows Kobel. He knows Kobel really well. And Pfannenstiel was a goalkeeper, and he actually coached Kobel at 15, even at Hoffenheim. Be that as it may, he said, that was almost like a mistake you would see from Bürki. And I thought, yeah, and maybe for that exact reason. But the situation never should have occurred had Dan-Axel Zagadou not been so lax and sloppy again in build-up. I mean, it is it is a liability right now at the back with him at times, with him being too nonchalant with the ball in clearance and build-up situations. And that's what led directly to that scene. So a more composed build-up, that scene never would have materialized.
Yeah, that is true. Because
but it did.
Logia, who won the ball off Bellingham, if you will, because Bellingham was the addressee of that pass, Logia knew the ball was coming to Bellingham before Zagadou probably knew he was going to play that pass. And Zagadou 100% needs to read that situation, that there's, I don't even want to call it the pressing trap, because it wasn't even subtle. You know, and obviously, yeah, you can talk about whether maybe Bellingham could move more toward the pass and you know, cut off Logia a little bit better. But you know, Bellingham, I think, in this situation is trying to turn the other way and toward the opponent's goal. And yeah, it's just something that Zagadou first of all needs to read. But the next thing, you know, so then Zagadou, I think, tries to regain possession, you know, moves out of the back line and moves forward and is unsuccessful. And then, of course, the pass gets played out to Antwi Ajay. And what really irks me in this pass to Ajay is, obviously, he has beaten everyone, is that when we talk about reading the situation, Thomas Meunier he's just jogging backwards, and the entire play doesn't affect him whatsoever. In no millisecond of the entire sequence, he does not raise his tempo whatsoever. He's just jogging back at the same speed. You know, when the pass gets played into the Bochum attacker, you would assume that a good right back, well, actually a good right back would have already tracked that run before. But a better right back than Meunier in this situation would have at least then increased his speed and tried to help. So that didn't really happen. And then, of course, the only guy who was still in a position to do anything about it, minus Kobel, is Mats Hummels. And I think this is a bit of the crux of Kobel. When you talk about Kobel not trusting his backline, I think the relationship between him and Hummels is a bit shady right now, because the trust that Kobel has had in Hummels, let's put it this way, right now just isn't there. Probably also, you know, a consequence of the Bayern game. And Hummels had a real tantrum after Kobel's foul, because he obviously knew that this was the wrong decision by Kobel to come out there. I don't actually know if Bürki would have made this mistake, to be honest, because Roman Bürki is not one that really leaves his line this quickly. No, it's also annoying that Kobel then doubled down on the sliding tackle. I feel like he could have at least avoided that one. But so it was really a clear penalty. And Matthias, I've just been, to me, that was really annoying in this entire situation. It was Kobel who made the error, because I feel like we, as Dortmund fans, have relied so heavily on him. And obviously, I've been raving about Kobel so many times on this podcast already. So, you know, for him to make the mistake is even more annoying, because so far he has really pitched almost a flawless game for the entire season. And yeah, this one is a really painful one, because it obviously means Dortmund dropped points, and there are no two ways around it. Had Kobel not made this error, it still probably would have not been, you know, anything other than a whiff by Bochum, knowing them. So yeah, this is really something that eats me up, that these mistakes happen. And yeah, obviously in the relationship among the backlines, also not helpful if your supposed leader of the backline throws an epic tantrum. So yeah, it's one of those situations that obviously do occur for Borussia Dortmund many times against any opponent, because you know, even VfL Bochum will get a chance or not, and the way Dortmund cocked this up, let's put it the way that it is also just an indictment on their entire backtracking. And while we can obviously say that The fact that Dortmund didn't score is maybe down to variance. The fact that they conceded certainly is not, and there's certain blame there, and that's really what's annoying about this game. Yes, Bellingham and Haaland both had excellent chances in the first half to go up 1-0, 2-0 or whatnot, and we would have never discussed about this penalty, which clearly was one. But here we are, and that's to me the most annoying part. Obviously, Matthias, there have been so many bright spots too in this game. The pass from Bellingham, for example, to Haaland in the first half, where he dribbles through 2 or 3 players first, was amazing. Haaland's pass to set up Bellingham for this big chance that Riemann saves, also quite genius play. There was so much free-flowing and attacking football against a really defensive-minded opponent that in many ways this was a very encouraging performance, right?
Well, absolutely. And to pick up your little baseball pitching analogy, sometimes even the great pitchers hit a batter. Sometimes you throw a wild pitch. It can happen. But to kind of dissect that whole backline situation and the lack of trust you're talking about when it comes to Hummels and Kobel, there was a scene in the Fürth game where there was a clear miscommunication between exactly those two players.
Yeah, you can hear Torwart very loudly, and Hummels is still going to it. Yeah, but part of that is also understanding, playing together for a longer period of time. I don't have a problem with Mats Hummels throwing a tantrum. He's a senior player. Sometimes, goalkeepers bitch out their back line every 2 seconds. I'm okay if they get barked at for being stupid, because that was stupid. But if we look at that whole backline situation in that game, and then you can also look at it in the Fürth game, you have, and it all comes down to Akanji. I mean, it really does. And it shows how important he is, because Akanji out, and then you have a left-footed player like Zagadou who is incapable of playing on the right side. We've seen it. It ain't pretty. So that means Hummels has to move to the right. He prefers to play on the left side in a backline pairing. And so that immediately changes things, because you have Thomas Meunier on the right-hand side, who is a good fullback, and I feel like he's vastly improved this season over last, but his reaction time isn't super fast. Never has been. And so you're coupling that with super pacey attackers from Bochum, then looking at Mats Hummels, who we all know, he was never pacey, even when he was 20 years old, but he's definitely not gotten faster with time. And then you have Zagadou, who's just he's always been, this is my biggest criticism of Zagadou, is he's very lax at times. He lacks concentration far too often, and he's sloppy in his build-up play far too often because he's too lax. Like, there's a lack of sense of urgency at times with him. And you always wonder, how can a team like PSG let such a highly talented young player just go to Dortmund? It's because they probably saw this and went, yeah, we'll just let him go. And then you have Nico Schulz on the left-hand side. And I really hate, I don't like the character assassination that happened with Roman Bürki. You and I have talked about that off recording, that's the biggest thing that churned my stomach with him. With Nico Schulz, it's very hard not to fall into that trap, because let's just say he's not a very good player. His only attribute that speaks for him is speed, which saves him at times. His passing is bad. His decision-making is bad. His build-up play is bad. I mean, it's just bad. But he's the best bad alternative and the only alternative that Dortmund have right now on that left-back side. And not to say Guerrero is, a world beater at left-back, but there's a certain level of confidence that at least his offensive positioning and his passing play will work. Backtracking, defensive positioning, Guerrero is horrendous. I've always said that, and it's been proven time and time again. But Nico Schulz is just worse. And then that just trickles through the whole backline and the whole team. And I feel bad for Nico Schulz. I don't know him personally.
Maybe he's probably a really nice guy. But it's like you can just tell there is no confidence in him from anybody in the team, and even his coach in the press conference after the Fürth game was like, well, he tries. Doesn't really come off that often, basically. He's trying his best, was the summary. And that is such an indictment.
I didn't even see that press conference, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically, Schulle, he's trying. It's like, okay, well, a lot of people can try. But at this point, I would just as soon see Felix Passlack out there. And that says a lot.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, Passlack tries too. Maybe throw somebody else out there who tries.
No, this is just, making a change for the sake of making a change. If I would change anything, it'd be maybe Guerreiro's professionalism / a muscular transplant, because this guy is missing too many freaking games for Dortmund to not have a better backup. Let's just put it this way. The problem is those two games, I actually, obviously it's always great to have Guerreiro on, no matter the opponent. But if you have two opponents that really clog the middle, and especially Fürth, and the way Dortmund play right now, you have to have fullbacks that can create something. If it were Guerreiro and Murray in these two games, the entire dynamic, the entire structure of the game just immediately changes to something much better and much nicer to watch, because so much more build up and ball progression is possible, especially against Fürth. That game was also just so terrible to watch because Nico Schulz and Meunier were way too often tasked with finding a spark, finding an idea. And I think Schulz had one good through ball to Royce or whatnot. And good for him. But overall, over the entire game, it's just tedious to watch. You see the Dortmund players are making runs, overlapping runs, or runs behind the defense, and they both don't have the technical ability to pick up those runs most of the time. It's just the decision making just isn't there. The pace of the Bundesliga, even against Fürth, is sometimes too far for their minds. And obviously, I wouldn't do any better. But as an observant from TV, it's just not on the level that Dortmund need to have fullbacks on, because they just, the way Dortmund play, they need a little bit more playmaking, mojo from those sides. So when Guerreiro is there, the entire dynamic of Dortmund's game just changes so dramatically. And he's just been missed quite a bit. So I really hope he is healthy against Hertha. And you said it pre-pod, the amount of injuries in general. Guerreiro's out for that game. Then I think Marlon had an illness against Fürth. I think Wolf
is out.
Yeah, so it's not helping. At least Hazard was back, and of course in the second half you had Julian Brandt also come on, to the surprise of many people. But at least it was like 20 minutes, and you can also see just how good Julian Brandt is right now. We can obviously talk about the way Dortmund came out of the locker room to start the second half, because that was also really encouraging, because I thought while they were actually playing better in the first half than in the second half, because they had a little bit more structure, there was a lot of urgency coming out of the locker room, and Bochum really were riding their luck. That's where you had, I think, Royce having a good chance, or I don't know if he tried to shoot it or find Haaland. But it was cleared off the goal line, contested by Haaland. And then I think Meunier had a shot and Schulz had something cleared off the line. So there was really sort of a period of power play. And then, of course, as so often, Matthias. And this is basically what's my question going to be now. We had Dortmund score a goal, and Bellingham was offside. He was in the line of the side of the goalkeeper. People have argued that, there was a Bochum defender that also blocked the keeper's view, and it doesn't really matter if Bellingham is there or not, yes, but the rules are the rules, really, and I think it was applied correctly here. It's not a goal, but yet again, a break of, I don't know, a minute or two, everyone standing around, and I feel like the VAR in this instance is just killing Dortmund's momentum. And I don't know, I've been a proponent of VAR, but I feel like at this point, and especially in the context also of the Bayern game, of VAR not really helping in the first place. It does not really eradicate the Bayern bonus as I may have hoped. I'm starting to, think maybe it's just time to scrap the entire thing and, just live with the wrong calls that referees are making. How are you seeing this? Because, even the offside checks take so long that it just kills flow and momentum of a game. And for Dortmund, that's right now really unhelpful.
Well, I'm a staunch opponent of VAR. I think it won't get scrapped. It's here forever now. The offsides by millimeters thing, I can see why it annoys some people. For me, it's either offside or it's not offside. That's not an interpretation thing. I think they need to, and it will improve over time. I mean, it's still a new technology in that sense, and it's already better now than it was when it first got implemented. The speed at which that kind of stuff can be calibrated, I think, needs to go quicker. I have a bigger problem with a situation where, as an example, it's a very clear handball where a player's arm is fully extended away from their body and the ball hits it and it gets deflected away. And for some reason, VAR needs to take a long time to look at it and then tells the ref, hey, you go look at it. And the ref stands there for surprisingly a minute and goes, okay, it's a penalty, when it's a penalty. Like, there is no doubt. That should have been a VAR checks it. Hey, you're going to take a look at this. We believe it's a penalty. He quickly dashes over to the screen, takes a look at it, goes, yep, that's a clear penalty. And that's the stuff that bothers me. Or that what bothers me is honestly what happened with the Hummels thing. Because I'm sorry, it's still bullshit. That's still utter and complete bullshit. And the misuse of the technology is what bothers me. Because it still comes down to people and their interpretation. And that's what VAR is supposed to take out of it, is that interpretive aspect to be taken away to a degree. With offsides, it's either offside or it's not. There's no interpretation. There are clear handballs, you give them. It shouldn't be that long of a debate. The Hummels incident where he got pushed and was falling and had his arm slightly extended and he wasn't even looking at the ball, to take that long to then decide for a bullshit penalty, I'm sorry, I have no understanding for that. It's just, I'll never give that one up, ever. And we go back to the Boateng situation from, I don't remember if it was last season or the season before that, where it was like, how is that not a handball penalty? It struck his arm and deflected away from goal. That is a penalty. And so that's the stuff that bothers me. So it's not even the tech, it's the douchebags running it at times, with clear favoritism. And in situations like this, yeah, the Bellingham thing, that was offside. I don't think you can really misinterpret that. According to the rules, it's offside. If a Bochum player is standing there as well, it doesn't matter because he can't trigger an offside on himself. Like, it doesn't negate an offside position in that sense. They're not infringing it. If you're infringing on your own keeper, tough noogies, that's just okay. But if the opposition player is doing it that benefits the opposition, then the rule applies, as so it should. But I'm still in favor of VAR, and I think a lot of this stuff, every year we've seen it now. They continuously evolve and make it smoother and better, and I would argue it's better now than it was when it first started, and then probably in a year or two it's going to be better then than it is now.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with it right now. So, That's all I have to say. Obviously, the goal by Julian Brandt in the end was really nice, and it's a shame that Dortmund didn't manage to find the winner later. Also kudos, I think, in the end to Bochum that they did muster a good defense, but very annoying game. And, the only consolation for me was that I got to meet Adam Dorowski later because he was in Philadelphia and had some bratwurst. That was really nice. But, that's pretty much about it because my day was otherwise quite ruined by this, especially since, on the in the Bayern game, they were also down to Mainz, who are really high flying right now, and managed to turn their game around, of course. And we just fell short. And, if you want to have a title race, as desperately I want to have one, it would be really cool, to not have a 6-point gap. This one really would have helped. But, here we are again. And it kind of felt to me like it put a bit of a dagger into the season, Matthias. And this is a perfect segue to the third game, which Dortmund obviously won. Expected goals 2.01 for Dortmund to Fürth 0.75, and they, I must add, did not get a penalty. So the attacking output by Fürth was much, much better than anything that Bochum produced in their 90 minutes. Shots were, Dortmund had 12 shots, 5 on target, to Fürth's 1 shot on target. I think they had 8 in total, and 5 to 8 corners. So Fürth actually won the corner battle. It wasn't that lopsided. And Dortmund had 64% possession, ran 119 kilometers, had 235 sprints to Fürth's 205. So it's interesting, considering how slow moving Dortmund's attack was, that they both outsprinted and outran Fürth in this entire game. The eye test certainly did not suggest that. And so you had, to sum it all up, you had players bickering, you had fans cheering, you had the coach arguing with TV pundits, you had opposing coaches now complaining about the Dortmund bonus and whatever Daniel Mahlen's new haircut is. So a lot of things to unpack here. Matthias, what are you making of this somehow very gruesome performance, yet a 3-0 win and the second clean sheet of the season?
Well, first of all, I fully applaud Donny Malen for his haircut because I, as someone with a shaved head, I can only agree that definitely makes you better at your sport. Because obviously that was the problem. No, I mean, this game, first of all, okay, let's unpack a few of these things. Rashid Azuzi, shut up. Didi Hamann, go away. Is it just me, or is every single ex-Bayern player who is a TV expert pundit a complete and total asshole? Is it just...
I was going to go for a tool, but yeah.
Is that just their thing? From Mehmet Scholl to Didi Hamann to Mario Basler to Oli Kahn and all these morons over time. It's like, are you just so dedicated to the Bayern assholeness that you continue that on in your retirement and you spew the assholedness of your previous existence? Fuck off. So, and I completely agree with Marco Rose and Didi Hamann can just...
I didn't even get to see it, but on the one hand, you can see the frustration of the Dortmund coach. On the other hand, Didi Hamann has been a lifelong tool, and I just absolutely can't do with his takes. And I really don't know why he has to be the pundit in this dumbass Sky studio. Jesus Christ. And I'm glad that I don't have to watch him on a regular. Now I'm blessed with the likes of Lutz Pfannenstiel. But nevertheless, still a better trade-off than Didi Hamann.
Didi Hamann makes me miss Lothar Matthäus. Okay? Because at least Lothar Matthäus occasionally actually had good analytical takes. Didi Hamann just spews bullshit. So fuck him. All right. Whew. Now I'm ready to roll. All
right, you're about as worked up as Dortmund players were on the field because Jesus Christ, was there a lot of complaining among people in black and yellow.
Yeah, it was a discombobulated performance, to put it lightly. It lacked flow until And I know people always give me shit for this until Mo Dahoud came on, and then it seemingly was better. But you look at that lineup, and you know, yeah, it's a midweek match against a bottom table side in December. These are always going to suck. That's just...
I don't know.
Like
I was low-key hoping for like a 6-7 nothing.
No. 40 plus years of Dortmund fandom. These always suck. Okay.
I mean, we had
whether
a
it's
5-0 or whatever it was against Besiktas, so
yeah. Well, you know, that's a little different.
maybe.
But that's not Greuther Fürth. Okay. The thing about Fürth, and I actually have watched some Fürth games because I'm like, they can't be this bad. And they're not this bad. I mean, that's the thing. You watch some of their games and it's like, it simply comes down to the individual quality of players just isn't good enough. But they play every team hard, even the ones that blow them away. And it's just, you know, Dortmund scored 3 goals. Yeah, one was a penalty, one was a set piece, and then, of course, Toni Malin with a really cool goal. But that's just what happens to teams like Fürth. You know, they just can't keep it up for 90 minutes because they're just qualitatively not that good. And their best players all got taken after their promotion. So that's just the way it is. So Dortmund winning 3-0 against Greuther Fürth by not, even though they didn't play well, sure, because they played really well against Bochum and didn't get the win. So it's fine. It was very stop-start. It was, it was just not a pretty game. But in the past, a lot of these not pretty games, Dortmund lost. And this time they won. So fine. We move on. The next game, I already know isn't going to be pretty because it's against a horrendously bad shit coach. Sorry. I'm really worked up right now.
No, it's okay.
No. But it's just that time of year. It's when Dortmund never shines. I'm sorry. Even under Klopp and so on, this was always the time of year where it was like, ugh. You know, how are we going to draw against bottom of the table Köln kind of a game? You know, it's just feels that way always. So, you know, again, what do you expect at times in a game like this when you have...
You see, here's what I actually expect, Matthias, and we can maybe talk about the rift between those two games because we have just analyzed the Bochum game for probably way too long. And against Bochum, you saw a team with a good spirit. You saw a team that was, you know, doing pretty much all the things right you need to do against an opponent like Bochum. I thought they were fighting really hard. They were playing well. They had good combination play. There was a flow. And in the end, obviously, it wasn't enough and it was super unlucky and one of those 1 in a million games and where you say, well, football is a low scoring game, yada yada. And super frustrated, but I feel like then you tune into the Greuther Fürth game and you see an entirely different team. You see Dortmund just completely frustrated. And I mean, I can understand, you know, I've been frustrated too this week between Bayern and Bochum, you know, all this stuff that happened, all the shit that went down. I can absolutely understand that Dortmund players are super unhappy with the development because before that, the final home game before the Bayern match, we had Dortmund fans singing about the German championship. We had, a really good win in Wolfsburg where, they were also really singing loudly. And then we had a performance against Bayern where you can actually be sort of proud of and say, okay, in maybe 1 out of 10 games, at least Dortmund come or 5 or 6 or 7 out of 10, maybe. Yeah, I think I misspoke there because Dortmund were, for most parts, the better team and didn't get away with anything. And then you travel to Bochum, play really well, and don't get a result. So I can understand the frustration, but it's still weird to see it all out there this blatantly on the field. And it's almost worrying because the performance was really bad. I think any other team than Fürth will probably capitalize on Dortmund's mistakes they made in build-up and the lack of backtracking. Unfortunately for Fürth, they just don't have the quality to do it. and then of course it took a while for Dortmund to even get going, to get on the score sheet. I think there's not really much of a debate about the penalty. It is a handball, and it's obviously very unfortunate for Fürth to concede a penalty like this, but we've all suffered these. Emre Can and Nico Schulz in the Champions League have something to say about it, and obviously it took quite a while for Dortmund to score another one, and you could really sense the frustration also coming from the stands, the boos and the whistles when the lethargic build-up was not really quick enough for people's liking. I don't know. To me, it was just overall dysfunction and an expression of how the recent weeks have been going, and I think everyone is just very unnerved. I don't know what else to say.
Well, I mean, for me, and again, was it 10 minutes ago I said I hate character assassination, dogpiling. And what I was going to say was, what do you expect when Axel Witsel is in the side? And I know you can't play Dahoud, who every minute of every game, but Dortmund are a completely different side. If your double pivot is anybody but with Axel Witsel. I mean, when it's Dahoud and Bellingham, Dahoud, Bellingham, Can, Bellingham, you need Dahoud because you need a playmaker. Because neither Bellingham nor Can are playmakers, especially if you're lacking playmaking build-up from the back. Dahoud is indispensable.
Sidebar, how do you feel about Dahoud Zakaria as a double pivot?
I would applaud it. And I think it is something that Dortmund will have to look at because, within the next couple of years, Jude Bellingham's going to be gone. I think Can is playing himself more into a alternate role, though a good alternate. And I like him in that central midfield more than anywhere else because his erratic behavior gets balanced out by those around him. So he's not as, I guess, vulnerable as if he's like a last man or a fullback. Plus that's his position in central midfield. But Axel Witsel, there's no aggression. His pressing resistance is good. I mean, he can move around in that regards, but he has no progressive passing. He has no progressive movement. And tracking back, he jogs. Bellingham, Dahoud, Can, they don't jog. Those are not jogging players. And, I know people like to harp on Can because he can be crazy at times. I love that, actually, because I feel like Dortmund don't have that enough. And his energy and his combativeness is something that Axel Witsel just doesn't have in his DNA. He just doesn't. And that's fine. Not everyone should be the same. But you need that player. And once Dahoud came in, it changed. Now, I will argue that I understand why Can came in for Reus because Reus needed a break. But in a perfect world, Can would have come in for Witsel, in my opinion.
I think they might have made a last second change because of the Hazard injury, right?
True. No, that's a good point. I
don't know for sure, but that's what I assume happened there.
Yeah, because Witsel, when it was peak Witsel, like Favre's first season, Axel Witsel was fantastic. He was absolutely fantastic.
He was also the perfect Favre player.
Exactly. I was going to say he's built for a Favre, slower, more patient build-up system where you're sitting a little bit deeper. You're not overly aggressive in your pressing. That's his style. He should join Favre wherever that is next. But he doesn't fit to this. He doesn't fit with anybody who was before Favre or anybody since Favre. Whereas Bellingham, Can, and Dahoud, and honestly, Thomas Delaney, he was perfect for this kind of a system, and I feel like Dortmund could really use him right now. But I think they'll figure that whole thing out in the summer anyway. So
yeah, maybe in
that
winter.
For
there
me,
are rumors that Zakaria might go
true,
to Dortmund for 7 million this winter, and I would appreciate that.
Oh, I will bite a hand off to take that. Are you kidding me?
I like my hands too much.
Well, the thing is, I'm not going to bite my hand off. I'll bite off Max Eber's hand.
Okay.
No. I'm too selfish for that. But I mean, the dynamism, if you have Bellingham, Can, Dahoud, Zakaria in your central midfield, that is a dynamic midfield that won't get out hustled, that won't get out worked, that won't get out pressed, and doesn't give up the ball easily. And that heart will already alleviate the pain and pressure that you then have on what I feel like is going to be an entire season of makeshift backlines. You know, because if you Witsel for me is a no-go. Is an absolute no-go at this point. I cannot stand seeing him in the lineup because I know what it's going to do. And it compounds the situation. If you're aggressive against Axel Witsel, he's useless. If you give him time, he's great. But if you put pressure on him, if you clog the central area, he doesn't know what to do, and he's horrible at progressive passing. And so if I look at the lineup, while you were talking, I was like flipping between the Bochum lineup and the Fürth lineup. I mean, you had Torgan Hazard versus Wolf. Take that as well. It's Witsel and Dahoud. That's the that's the big difference right there. And Brandt and Can, but really it's Witsel and Dahoud. That's the big difference. And once Dahoud came in against Fürth, it immediately changed. You still had Witsel next to him. Again, in a perfect world, if you take off Bellingham, you kind of got to put on Can in there and then take off Witsel and put in Dahoud. I mean, that would have been the perfect swap, but you're not always in that type of situation. So I get it. For me, it's get to the winter break, get to the January transfer window, bring in a left back, central midfielder, and a backup striker, and we're good.
Yeah, and maybe did you say center back?
No, I wouldn't necessarily go with center back. I mean, Zagadou, if you solidify the fullback positions, that will help your central defenders as well, because you have Zagadou, you have Pograncic already in there. Akanji's going to be fit again in the new year. Well, when
sweet summer child.
Yeah, but I mean, still, if Akanji and Hummels are in there, no one's getting past them in the lineup. So who are you going to get then? So right. I think you're fine there right now. But that left back, man, because the thing is, if you bring in a left back, a proper starting left back, well, then your option is to put Guerreiro in central midfield.
Exactly.
And then you have so much creativity and dynamism in there. And you accentuate his strengths and you eliminate his weaknesses completely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even put him, not even in central midfield, put him behind the striker at times, because then you're not even asking him to track back. And that for me would be the perfect solution. Even more, I mean, if you get Adeyemi and you get a proper starting left back, I can then be okay with waiting for a Zakaria type player until the summer, because you can move Guerreiro in central midfield. Yeah. And with Adeyemi, you can put him on the wings at times, and then you have more flexibility. You bring in those two, then I think Dortmund's fine through to the summer.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I don't know. There are so many moving parts right now. I don't even know where to start. What I wanted to bring up, though, real quick, in the 75th minute when Marlon and Can came on, there was the first 2 minutes of Can being on. There was really this awkward moment where he sort of told his teammates, including also Haaland, I think, to press, because that's a point I'm almost mentioning every week now, but I feel like, and Marco Rose as the head coach and his assistant coaches, they have to address this, that Dortmund still don't know how and when to press. Let's talk about the lack of automatism in Dortmund's pressing, and it's not only that, it's the compactness, because these are the two things that you really do need to have a good pressing. Need to have a good trigger points. You need to the entire team needs to know who to press when and who sort of gives the signal and who who triggers the entire pressing motion, because it's, like a school of fish where bigger shark swims through. Every other fish around needs to know and react exactly in a similar time frame, and Dortmund just don't do that right now, and it's annoying as hell, because I really hope that by now under Marco Rose this one thing would have improved, but it has not, to my personal satisfaction. And just this moment where Emre Can is basically moving his hands around, telling people to press opponents, and it all breaks down immediately after. It's just not nice and fun to watch. And I feel like had Dortmund gotten this down a little bit better, I think they'd be a completely different team in terms of how good they are, because I still feel like Dortmund do not utilize the ability they have to counterattack enough, because that is something you get from counter-pressing and winning the ball high up the field. And I think that there are way more opportunities for them to actually do that. And especially against side like Fürth. And even if you just force them to punt the ball, eventually there will be a moment where they actually just try to pass it, and then you intercept it, and then you have the space to combine. And I think Dortmund need to bring themselves more often into this situation. And obviously, I can totally understand why it's not there yet, just because of the million injuries. And I think a lot of players are just tired. But at the same time, I also think there's a systematic problem that players really don't know where the trigger points are and how to run up against opponents. And that is also down to the coaching staff. And I really hope that they can figure this one out, because it's really annoying. And as for the pressing, this is one thing. The other thing that really annoys me very often is the compactness. Because I think the spaces between Dortmund players at almost any given moment in the game are often way too far apart. And when we talk about positional play, I think there's a certain discipline that comes to it in the positional play, that you are always aware where your teammates are, where the ball is, and that you are not spread out too far, because then you cast a much narrower net to gain the ball. And I just think that in so many moments of the game, momentum is wasted because Dortmund players are standing too far apart. And I think while we can lament Axel Witsel, I think there are also systematic problems with this Dortmund team, why ball progression isn't fast enough. It's because the spaces between players are too far, and obviously then if you add that the fullbacks can't really run around as they want to, and not really speed up the play, I think the angles and the spaces between fullbacks and the rest of the teams also needs to be narrowed down, so you make it easier for Schulz, so he doesn't have to pick out a 20-meter pass, but maybe just a 15 or 11-meter pass, something like that. It's just a couple of details right now that really annoy me, and I think the Fürth game really highlighted it in many ways, that Dortmund just aren't there where they need to be from a tactical standpoint, and it doesn't really matter what system you apply, it's just very often the case. And Dortmund have so much individual quality that many times it doesn't matter, but I still feel like there's so much more potential that's untapped in this team, and something about that needs to happen. Rant over.
Well, I agree and disagree.
That's okay.
I agree that there are obvious, it's clear, that there are issues in pressing, especially when certain players are not playing versus when other players are playing. First of all, a little side tangent. The people on Twitter who call themselves Dortmund fans who are calling for Marco Rose to get sacked, can you just shut the fuck up? That's just stupid. You're opening yourself up to the stupidity that you are, because that's imbecilic.
I'll be honest, I've not seen a single person tweet that.
I've had it tweeted at me so many times that this is all down to Marco Rose. So first of all, this is a team that in its core is the same 12 months ago. So you went from a 5 system to a transitionary Terzic system, which did not look good for the first few months, is the last 3 months where it looked amazing, to a new system with Marco Rose. And you lost Jadon Sancho. Okay, he was a very, very key component to the success with Terzic in the final 3 months.
He never did anything good.
No, just 16 goals in the second half of the season. But building a cohesive tactic with a cohesive press, I look at Pep Guardiola and Jürgen Klopp, who are the two best when it comes to this by far, and even Thomas Tuchel. It took, specific looking at Guardiola and Klopp, it took them a few years at Manchester City and at Liverpool to transition out of a system that didn't do that to a system that did do that, and getting the right players in. I mean, they all have world-class players now. Let's not forget. I mean, the €1 billion+ that were spent under Guardiola at Manchester City and probably Liverpool as well help. That kind of helps, you know.
You think?
A little bit. So Marco Rose has been in charge now for 6 months.
Yeah, he didn't even have a full summer prep.
Started July 1. Yeah, he didn't have a full summer prep because you had the Euros. You still had COVID restrictions. He didn't have his full squad available for practice until maybe August. Then you had key players that were still injured beyond that lacked fitness and continuously got injured. Plus, you were playing at a clip of almost every 3 days.
Yeah.
Okay?
And Gio Reyna was out almost the entire season.
Correct. The problem is that clip of playing every 3 days is not changing. Dortmund are in the Europa League, so you're going to play Thursday, Sunday. That's going to be the clip there, and you're still in the Cup. So that's still going. It is a shortened winter break because of that shit that's going to happen 12 months from now in Qatar. That truncates the season further. So you throw all of that in there and not being able to move certain players that I'm sure they wanted to move. I'm pretty sure they wanted to get rid of Axel Witze. And Nico Schulz and so on. And it just didn't happen. Or Roman Bürki. So you couldn't free up the budget space to bring in other players that would have fit the system better. It will come. And Marco Rose just needs the patience and the time for a team that is still in Europe. Yes, it's the Europa League. I don't care. People who say Dortmund not being the Champions League for the second half of the season is going to be damning for the recruitment of next season. That's bullcrap because they're going to be in the Champions League next season. They're second in the league, and they're favorites right now because obviously Bayern aren't in it to win the DFB Pokal. So people need to just chill a little. Given everything that I just listed that Marco Rose's team in the entire squad has been dealing with so far, the fact that those accomplishments are still there is damn near remarkable. Not miraculous,
for the part where you disagree with me, though.
I just disagree with the sense of putting it on the coaches. I think he's in an unenviable position, while obviously being enviable. He's Dortmund coach. I mean, could be worse. You could be Hertha coach. but no, I mean, it's just people need to calm down, chill a little bit, adjust their expectations to the situation at hand. And Dortmund won 3-0 when not playing well. Yes, this is against Greuther Fürth, who may go down as the worst Bundesliga side in history.
But you could pull it Union Berlin and lose to them.
That is true. That is very true. So, it's just chill a little. Maybe ignore Twitter during games. That really helped me. After games, it's funny. During games, it's frustrating because it builds up your own anxiety.
Well, I have to ignore Twitter for the most part just because the delay is so stark. I don't want to get spoiled.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Plus, I've heard NBA Twitter can be even worse. So you have my sympathies. You have my fullest sympathies. But to me, it's going to come. Yes, Haaland's going to leave after the season. I think that's, Mino Raiola's pretty much said that he's out. But that's okay. Because Dortmund are going to get another striker. They're going to change in that regard. Losing Haaland will obviously be huge, but if everybody else plays really well and the system becomes cohesive and not everyone's hurt all the time, it'll help. Now, granted, next season is going to be really annoying because you're going to have that really long break. And I guarantee you it's the World Cup break's going to come at a time when Dortmund are probably undefeated at the top of the Bundesliga, and then 3 players get injured and all falls to shit. So I'm going to blame FIFA now for next season becoming second.
All right.
So anyway, that's kind of my, I guess it wasn't truly a rebuttal to what you said.
No, I think we both have a similar, I mean, everything you just said is correct. I don't disagree with that at all. I think I'm just annoyed that we aren't there yet, but like I said, I can 100% understand why it is. It's not a coincidence, or I don't, Marco Rose to me hasn't really proven yet that he's a terrible coach who will never get Dortmund into this pressing shape that I want them to see. And I think there are hints that he wants to play the system, and that's encouraging, but I can understand why we haven't seen it yet. And obviously maybe you need some more turnover in terms of players you have. Plus, then, one thing we haven't really mentioned, but obviously, he has also some construction sites within that team. Save, Daniel Malen is an entire freaking project of someone you have to like individually coach to even become near the player you need to play such a system, because his pressing instincts, let's say, weren't really there when he arrived. It's improved, but it's still miles away. So if you talk about, how well Dortmund need to play, it's also to just, individual players need to improve as well. And now, obviously, lastly, the Malen goal was fantastic. The way he stepped on the ball and then just flicked the ball into the net, sort of with a flick of his ankle. Just fantastic. I think, was it Pfannenstiel who said it was a little lucky? There wasn't any luck. There was just an entire skill goal. I'm sorry. It was a cool move. It beat the defender and the keeper without being a power shot, just based on skill and something that was not expected by either defender or goalkeeper. And I really applaud this goal. And he's now really on a good streak. I don't really want to comment too much on his hair, but yeah, it's another tiny little feel good moment we have from this game. So I'll take it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we obviously hope that we'll see more skill moves by Daniel Malen against our next opponent, which is Hertha Berlin. So yeah, Hertha obviously are not doing particularly well. I think they're 14th in the Bundesliga table right now. And yeah, what can we say about Hertha? They never really look any good. So after the what was it, the 1-1 draw against Augsburg, where Augsburg equalized like in stoppage time, they axed Paul Dardai, which I think was the slowest moving sacking in the Bundesliga I've ever seen. And drum roll, they've then announced Tayfun Korkut to take over, another completely uninspiring coach. So perfect match for this club. So when we look at Hertha, there's just not much exciting there. They have scored 17th goal. They, have the 13th best attack. And from those 17 goals, they have only scored 7 at home, which makes them the 15th best home attack. And they have conceded 33 goals overall, which is the 17th best. So only Fürth's defense is worse than them. The best goal scorer is Jovetic with 5 goals to his name. And I think, as far as I know and as far as kicker reports, he is going to be out. So is Suat Serdar, our old friend from Schalke 04, who have since been relegated. He is most likely out too. So the only hope they have is that Pekarik could return to right back, which has been described as a problematic position for Hertha. So yeah, Tayfun Korkut's record since he took over is a 2-2 draw against Stuttgart, a 2-0 win against Bielefeld, and most recently a 4-0 blowout at the hands of Mainz 04, where they really lost terribly. I think the expected goals they produced was 0.5. Mainz overperformed a little bit with 2.6, but nevertheless, Hertha Berlin are a team that are not fun to watch ever, and we are, every time this happens, and I don't know why the Hertha away days are always in like the midst of the cold winter. I don't know when the last time Dortmund had a warm away day against Hertha Berlin. The only way you can get a warm day at the Olympiastadion is when you reach the cup final. So, Matthias, like I just said, their defense is terrible. Their structure, you can usually absolutely forget about it. But somehow, after this performance against Fürth, my optimism is at an all-time low. Since you are the eternal optimist, Matthias, please now explain to me how Dortmund are going to get away with 3 points against this shit team.
But can they do it on a cold, blustery night in Berlin? So it's not Stoke, it's Berlin. So Hertha for me is kind of the biggest head scratcher ever. Because if you would get a good sporting director and a good progressive thinking coach in there, given it's Berlin and the overall infrastructure
and the money that's been pumped into
and
by
the
Mr.
money for
Windhorst.
Hertha that's there, they should be challenging for Champions League. It's just weird. But if you look at it, now obviously Freddy Bobic only came in the season. He's trying to clean up the mess that was there before. People like Christian Preetz did him absolutely. Christian Preetz, Michael Preetz, whatever.
Yeah. Long-time terrible person that should not be
did
in
not
professional
do
football.
him any favors at that club. He inherited Paul Dardai, who I like Paul Dardai. I liked him as a player, very workmanlike and so on. And he was brought in to stabilize the ship after the unfortunate tenure of Bruno Labbadia. That's fine. He's a good stabilizing coach, but he won't get you to where you want to be. On top of that, this wasn't Paul Dardai's side. This was almost like somebody had FIFA or Football Manager and went, "Who has a high value? Let's just buy him."
Like
without a
Piontek
thought.
and Tuzar.
Yeah. I mean, no thought of cohesion and squad building. And then you let someone who's actually decent for you, like Mateusz Cunha, just go away. And then to say, then you bring in Tayfun Korkut. You may as well have kept Paul Dardai. I'm sorry. But you bring in Tayfun Korkut, where I've never made bones about the fact that I don't think he's good enough to coach in the Regionalliga. And I've heard people try to explain it. Well, he's a nice guy. People, players like him. He can stabilize the team. That all may be true. And when my criticisms of Tayfun Korkut isn't about him as a human being. Okay, I don't care about that, but I don't care about it in this context. Hertha don't need stabilization. They need an identity. They need a coach to go in there that doesn't stabilize them, but that actually progresses them, and Tayfun Korkut is not that coach. I mean, if anything, Augsburg has progressed and Hertha has regressed. I didn't think that was going to be the case because Augsburg are not good and they don't have a very good coach. That was another hill
club though in 2014 or 2015.
Yes. No. In that year, he was the right coach at Augsburg, but he was the
coach at Hanover back then.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Augsburg and Weinziel.
No.
But I mean, Augsburg Weinziel is basically Hertha Dardai. It was kind of a weird thing. This is a game that Dortmund will win. This is a game that will not be pretty. This is a game that people will lose their patience. But Dortmund are going to win because Hertha are not good. They are inept, but they will have their opportunities because they do have individual quality players, which Fürth don't. At Bundesliga level, they can challenge Dortmund. So Hertha will clearly have their moments. I have no doubt about that. But I have no doubt that Dortmund are going to win this game. I like you. I wish it wasn't, a cold night in Berlin again, because I feel like it's every year that end of November, beginning of December, Dortmund have to travel to Hertha. It definitely feels that way because I can think of at least 2 games. One, of course, Moukoko scored in, and then another one, Reus had like a late one, but that may have been an early spring game, like right after the winter break, but it feels the same because the weather's still really bad in Germany. So yeah, it's I'm more optimistic than you, but I'm not optimistic that this is going to be a pretty game.
Well, so I just saw from Ruhr-Nachrichten, they're reporting that Hazard should be okay to go. That basically whatever he had, this injury scare wasn't really too terrible, and I think maybe he stopped at the right moment and was just lucky that the substitution was coming right up. And Guerreiro is also probably going to play. So this already changes a lot. So one thing, a listener has asked why Bellingham received that one yellow card in the Fürth game. It was during a free kick when the Fürth goalkeeper wanted to set his wall. He was just standing there and moving from left to right to block the communication. And yeah, that's a yellow card. Now he's suspended. Obviously I asked last time we recorded whether he should get one, because he was on 4 yellows in Bochum, so he wouldn't have to play against Fürth. But now I'm actually kind of glad that he's out against Berlin, so that he won't be out against Frankfurt, which I think will be a much different game than the first between those two. And Bellingham obviously out, so that means Dahoud. If legs allow it, I would play Dahoud and Can, and Axel Witsel would definitely not feature in this game if it can be avoided in any sort of way. And then I'm somewhat more optimistic about Dortmund's midfield, because you've said it many times now, and I totally agree. When Dahoud is on the field, Dortmund generally play a much better brand of football. And speaking of brand, I think his positive form will continue. As for Hazard, I would probably start Malen again if he's recovered enough from his illness or whatever he had. And then of course, I think Erling Haaland just loves to score in the Olympiastadion, and with that, the optimism is back that no matter what Hertha do, and no matter how much Dortmund cock up at the back, which they will, because this backline they're currently having is just not good, and mistakes are made, especially from the two center backs, and who knows what Kobel is up to. I just think that Dortmund will outscore Hertha, and it's probably going to be like an ugly 3-1 win or something if I had to pick a scoreline. Like where it's 1-1
that's like
until
exactly
like the 70th minute, and then Dortmund finally break through or something like that. But who knows? You never know with this Dortmund team, because if they show the performance they showed against Bochum, chance are they're 3-0 up at halftime, and that's probably that. And then maybe they fall apart later. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean 3-1 is kind of what I was thinking personally.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels that way. Not pretty, but effective, and 3 points, and ideally no injuries. That's really all I want from this game. I don't really care beyond get the 3 points and stay healthy.
And also be nice to have a game without any refereeing controversy after the game, where the referee by either team isn't maligned. That'd be swell too. But yeah, I mean, other than that, Dortmund are in a very comfortable position now, because the last match day, apart from the Bayern game where they select Stuttgart nothing, was good to them. I mean, for Wolfsburg, who in theory could have been a competitor for Champions League spots, lost again, this time to Cologne. We had Leverkusen and Hoffenheim take points off each other, because Leverkusen, as so often, have collapsed in the second half. Union Berlin and Freiburg had a scoreless draw, and Leipzig had a 1-1 draw away to Augsburg. So if you look at the table right now, going into the final match day of the season, obviously the cushion to Bayern is 6 points, and I think 20 goals in just goal difference. But then you have a 6-point cushion to Bayer Leverkusen, right? You have a 7-point cushion to Hoffenheim, then 8 points to 5th place Freiburg, and 10 points to 6th place Mainz, and then you have Frankfurt and Berlin on the same scoreline, and then lastly 12 points, I think it is the gap to RB Leipzig, and then 14 to Wolfsburg. These are obviously the only teams before the season where I thought we would compete against. And, in terms of qualification for the Champions League, I think this is going really well for Dortmund because other teams are really struggling, including Leipzig and Wolfsburg. And if I had to make a projection right now, I think that it's going to be Frankfurt and Leverkusen who join Dortmund in the Champions League. I don't really have an argument why it wouldn't be Hoffenheim. It's just that I don't want it to be Hoffenheim, and Frankfurt look very hot right now. They look very comfortable in their attack. Things are starting to click. And I'm already dreading the away trip to Frankfurt at the start of the Rückrunde. So, it's not all bad. I think if Frankfurt, if they make it to the Champions League, that would be amazing, especially if Leipzig miss out on it. And so it's, the Bundesliga has some perks maybe in store, some stuff I can hope for. So, Matthias, I think if we both lock in 3-1, I think that would be a good scoreline. At this point of the season, it really doesn't matter if you play well or not. At the end of the day, I don't care. If Dortmund win an ugly game and don't even play well, I don't give a fuck. To be honest, I don't care.
No, I mean
about
it's about
pressing.
getting the points.
I just care about the result at the end of the day, especially against Hertha. Just beat them. No matter how lucky it is, just win the freaking game.
Yeah, it's the ugly time of the year when it comes to playing, especially tired legs and playing so many games for Dortmund, throwing in international matches for national team players as well. It just, you hit that ugly patch. All teams tend to have it except Bayern. And the reason why Bayern don't have it is because their bench is exceptionally strong.
Yes.
That is the difference. That is the difference maker between Bayern and everybody else in the league, that their drop off to their backups is nearly negligible. If you can take off, I think even Funchty said it, if you take off Kingsley Coman and you bring on Leroy Sané, that kind of says a lot right there.
Exactly.
And that's why they can afford to let, David Alaba go, because they're like, we're good. Our depth plays at the highest international level. So that's really the big difference. And to expect Dortmund to get there, especially in pandemic times, with restrictions to income and so on, it's just utopic right now.
Yeah, it's impossible.
I personally, since we talked just generally about the Bundesliga, the fact that you listed after Bayern, Dortmund, and Leverkusen, which I think are three teams you expect to be near the top, the fact that you listed Hoffenheim, Freiburg, and Mainz as the next ones,
right? That
does speak to. We always say, the Bundesliga is worse than it used to be, and that's simply because we don't have a good title race for 10 years almost. But outside of that, it's very tight in the Bundesliga. The problem is that's not necessarily good for the Bundesliga and the international scene, Champions League and Europa League, because even though it's a great story for a Hoffenheim or a Freiburg and a Mainz to be like, hey, we're playing Europa League, we're playing Champions League, they have no chance in those competitions. It is better for a club like Gladbach or Frankfurt or Hertha to be in those positions simply because of the power that club can do to bring in better players and be competitive.
Here's the problem, Matthias, and you are absolutely right, is that there are clubs in Germany that should be in the fight for these positions right now and in the long term, and one of them 100% must be HSV, who right now are in the second division. The other one is Schalke, who are in the second division, and you can add Werder Bremen, who are also in the second division. So
throw in Kaiserslautern.
Exactly.
There are just these power clubs, like you said, that should be there, that would eat up the vacuum of a Mainz, a Hoffenheim, and a Freiburg, and they failed. They are failures as clubs. They have failed. Throw in Köln. Köln should be right up there, given what that club is, what its infrastructure is, what the city it's in. Because no offense to Freiburg or Sinsheim or Mainz, it isn't Köln, it isn't Hamburg. in that, or okay, Gelsenkirchen, whatever.
This is why I rest my
not the
hopes.
Ruhrgebiet.
That's why I rest my hopes on Frankfurt this season. That I hope that they can, on the long term, establish themselves as a Champions League team. That would be cool if they become the 4th best team in the Bundesliga, and maybe Leipzig struggles continues, and Other thing is, I also really don't need Bayer Leverkusen. If the Kartellamt could just come in and say, how about we end this entire operation here? I'd be out in the street celebrating for like a good 10 minutes. But Matthias, we're 1 hour and 20 minutes into the recording, and we're yet to mention the Europa League draw. So, since you're the oldie here and remember better than I do when Claudio Reyna could not beat Jens Lehmann in a penalty shootout, what are you making of this draw?
Well, as a former resident of Scotland,
here we go,
where I have a lot of love and affection for Scotland. That love and affection doesn't necessarily extend to Rangers. That was a great historic battle. Dortmund have had, and Rangers have had a few over the years. I want to say even in Dortmund's European Cup Winners' Cup campaign, I think they may have played against Rangers, but I could be wrong because I'm not that old. Screw you. I think it obviously plays well for Dortmund. Dortmund are the better side. They would be the favorites, etc., etc. Rangers, who came back from the quote-unquote ashes, led by Steven Gerrard, which, I'll be honest, I didn't see that coming against a overpoweringly dominant Celtic over the last few years in Scotland. So all power to them for achieving that. It's going to be an interesting one. I do hope, this is what, to echo Marco Rose's sentiments, I hope that when they do play, that fans are allowed to be in the stadium, because it would be a real shame for two very passionate fan bases to not be able to be there in a stadium for something like that. And I'm looking forward to it. I think Dortmund are the favorites. I think Dortmund should win both legs. But then again, I thought Dortmund would, do that against Sporting. So I've been wrong before. Or Cyprus teams. But no, I think this will be a fun one. I'm not a Rangers supporter. I'm not a Celtic supporter, even though I lived in Scotland. My interests were more towards Edinburgh because that's where I lived. But it'll be an interesting one. And of course, Dortmund have some history with Rangers, given that Stefan Klos for many, many years was the keeper for Rangers. So it's going to be the Stefan Klos derby.
Yeah, I think he's already been interviewed by Rönnach about it. Obviously one of my all-time favorite players. When I was a kid, he was just my icon. And I was very sad when I think he left in 1998, and there was some controversy around it too. I think he had to sue the club or something. I don't know exactly what happened, but tremendous goalkeeper, and something that ties both clubs together. Obviously, both have faced each other, I think, 8 times. First time being in the Cup Winners' Cup in 66, where Glasgow won 2-1, and then in the same season in the away leg, or in the home leg rather, it was a scoreless draw. I'm seeing another scoreless draw later in the UEFA Cup, and a 2-0 loss against Rangers, then a 2-2 draw against Rangers, another 2-2 draw, and then in the UEFA Cup, in 99, 2000, Rangers won their home game, but then Dortmund came back in their home game, and it was a 5-1 win for Dortmund after penalties. So a lot of history between those sides, especially in the 90s and in the 80s. Obviously, it's always good to see when you see Dortmund play in years in 66 and 67. Just once again explains how rich the history is of this Dortmund team. And in that breath, once again, a reminder to buy Terry DeFellon's book because you can read more about it. And with that, Matthias, I think we can end it here. We've both given our scoreline predictions. So if people want to heckle you again about Mark Rose needing to be fired, where can they do that on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at Matthiasuk.
Wonderful. You can find me at Stefan Butzko. You can follow all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to subscribe to this podcast, please do that on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. If you want to contribute financially, go to go to patreon.com/theyellowwall this way. And other than that, as always, everyone out there, thank you for listening. Stay safe, and shall you not listen to the next episode because Dortmund lost to Hertha and you just don't want to forget about it, then in that case, enjoy your holidays and goodbye.